Hi, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of Evolve with Titans. We have had a long break, for obvious reasons. But I'm super happy to welcome my very good friend Ratish. I'm super excited that we are starting back the Evolve with Titans with Ratish. So, for people who don't know Ratish, Ratish is instrumental in running the company called SPI Edge, and he does some amazing experiments. That's what he calls them. And one of the experiment is Aspire, and Studio A works closely with Aspire in building habits for all the resources in Studio A. So that's how I started working very closely with Ratish, and I immediately felt, okay, there's so much that I can ponder upon from Ratish's brain and give it to all of you. So Ratish, welcome.
Hi.
And thank you so much for accepting to do this.
Thank you for calling me.
And Ratish, I know you do several things. In fact, before we decided to talk and have a conversation like this, I was really thinking, what is that one topic I can talk to you about, because there are several things that we can talk about. So for the ease of or for the for the sake of a subject, let's talk about habits, because I know you're also a habit coach.
Yes.
And that's precisely what you're doing through Aspire with Studio A. So, and also I'm an habit freak myself. I love how habits change a personality. So I want you to introduce yourself a little bit, and then also tell us, how did you get into this habit formation, and how did you get into this whole habit world?
So, I didn't go to college. Very early in my life, I realized while preparing for UPSC and stuff like that it's very easy to create social change if you are always working through individuals. And at that time, I found extremely benevolent coaches who were willing to spend time with me and showing me how not to do things. And I realized that there are so many individuals here in our country who don't have access to useful wisdom. And I have a very nice way to put what a wisdom means, So tomato is a fruit, and that's knowledge. Not using tomato for a fruit salad is wisdom. So we don't have a lot of people who can give us useful, accessible wisdom. And I was lucky to receive that. And as we grow, we evolve. Not just our biases, but the way we live our life evolves. We become better. And through the journey, when I reflect, I have realized that they didn't just impart wisdom. They actually trained me to live a sustainable life. And what I mean sustainable is they imprinted behaviors in me that I can demonstrate in front of others because I am living it by example. And I learnt, I think after 2000, that 2010, I think, 2010, that it's called a habit. And it's how, most people say we are what we repeatedly do, right? So what are we doing? And and there's a spiritual angle to it. What are you being? What are you doing? You will have that kind of a life. So if I am being happy, I do happy things at this moment. So at this moment when I'm talking to you, I'm having a happy life. So it's and people say it's count the number of moments that take your breath away. Don't actually count the number of moments that you're experiencing at this point in time. So habits are about creating moments. Habits are about me making my life memorable in such a way that I'm leading by example. And habits are the most positive, sustainable way to live your life. Right from the time you get up, to the time you actually spend with your wife, to how you create social change. It's all about habits. We can only do what we've learned to do, and we can only do better what we've trained our mind to do better. So right from the time I finished schools and I received mentorship, everyone has been kind and benevolent enough to tell me that these are useful behaviors and these are not useful behaviors. And picking that up one by one and trying to fit that into my life has been I think a more evolved journey. So that has led me to believe that habits are a great way to create a transformation in an individual, and that's what's important.
So what do you mean by you didn't go to college?
I tried going to college. It became very difficult for me to fit into that culture, because everyone kept telling me, you don't belong here. I think college education is a waste for you. I think I just picked that up and I said, okay, I will start working. So I started working at the age of 16, 17.
Oh. That explains it, Ratish. So, but what was the time? What is the time that you got a revelation that okay, habits are everything, right? Like habits maketh a man. So what is the time?
I think there are three phases. When I was working on social entrepreneurship in the first phase of my life until I turned, I think 2021, I realized that the most sustainable way to create social change is to work amongst people. So there's a saying, money can do things for you and money can do things through you. So making things happen through you is more sustainable than making things happen for you. So in social change, one of the biggest things that I learned was behavioral change is the biggest transformation that you can create to create a socio-economic change in the system, and that is transformation. I just brought that same thinking into organizations and consistently questioned leaders who are leading organizations to say, an organization is like an organism, it's like a body. Digestive system, respiratory system, circulatory system are all like HR, finance, functions that make up an organism, which is the organization. So if your brain and heart are not connected with your hand, which is basically your CEO, CFO, you can call it anyone. Your leadership team is like the head, heart and hand. And if they are not aligned and they don't sing in a rhythm, you can never create a purpose-driven brand. You can never create a purpose-driven culture. And culture is something that you can scale. So that intangible word culture is a collection of people, and people are a collection of habits. And therefore, organization development, organization change is deeply rooted in habit formation. And people call this habit formation an organization called policy, protocol. These are our values. These are the ways we actually do things. Nanga ipritha. The way to communicate that is also a habit.
So you're saying policies and procedures and all that, very corporatish terms
are nothing but habits.
When it relates to culture, it is habits.
It is habits.
So see, all that is good, Ratish, for somebody who's watching this now in front of the computer and going, okay, like where do they start? Like how do you come to an organization? How do you pick up people, and where do you start with them? For example, I don't know if everybody in my organization is ready to take up habits, to take up policies and culture. Where do you start?
I think the first place you start is with the values of the organization. If you go to any office, you speak to the leaders of the office, or you take organization. You go to an organization, they proudly boast what their values are. Now there's a trick. And most people don't discuss this trick out in the forum. There's something called as said values, and then there's something called as practiced values. Said values are what you see around. Practiced values are what actually gets translated. I'll give you a classic example. Let's say one of the values of an organization is integrity. Okay. One of the practiced values is we pay bribes. So there's a distinction, right, between what you say versus what you actually do. So you can always start with what you do, show the dissonance to the person who built this organization from scratch. It could be the promoter, it could be the founder, it could be today in startups it's called a CEO. You could speak to them and understand, is this what you wanted to build? If the answer is no, that's the place that you need to start. Very simple. Start with the values. Why are values important? I'll just spend some time on that. All of us want to have a life of value. We want to be valuable to the society. We want to be valuable to a unit called as family. We want to be valuable to the extended unit called neighborhood. And we want to be valuable as an individual who's useful, who's meaningful. It's a value. So working on those values is very critical than becoming valuable. Because if you don't know how to imbibe those values, if you don't know how to translate those values into action that your customer can see, that your employees can see, that your family can see, then you don't know how to become valuable.
See, but that's the thing, Ratish. So everybody wants to have values. Yes. They want to, right? Like everybody has goals. Yes. But converting them into actions and taking it, like attaining them, 95% of us fail, right? Yeah. Like everybody wants to reduce weight. Yeah. We say, okay, in the next 3 months we'll reduce 10 kilos. First 2-3 days we are so good. Like first 1 week is okay. Then slowly you go back to your old self, yes. Right? So
there are some laws that is related to habit formation. One of the first laws of habit formation is to actually keep it so simple that it becomes a thoughtless activity for you to begin. I'll take the case in point example of somebody wanting to lose weight. 9 out of 10 people, if they want to lose weight, either they come out with an elaborate plan, or they actually spend some time buying all the equipments and all the accessories needed to hit the gym, or they will find the nearest gym, pay enough money and make a undesirable favorable commitment. This is the usual first steps. The first thing that you should do is mindset. Why do you want to build this habit is more important than what will this habit give me. I'll give you an example. If I want to lose weight, the first question I need to ask the individual, or let's say I am that individual, I need to ask, why am I doing this? Most people skip this question and go to how they want to lose weight, and therefore they do whatever it takes to lose weight, and they realize that without the purpose, the how does not get translated. Whatever I do with what is a waste of time.
So is it purpose or intent?
Ideally it's a desire.
Intent.
It's a
Desire.
Okay, I need to see the want to lose the weight.
Unless and until you have that, you cannot...
What's also favorable is I can show you a picture like this and say, sir, look at him. He's successful. Look at him and look at me. I want to be like him. Now that's a desire. But you've answered the question why you want to lose weight, right? The moment that desire comes, and it is very easy to identify that in an individual when they speak to you. You know, they take shorter breaths, their pupils dilate, you know, the skin color changes. They mean it when they say it. So when you do that, then you suddenly help the individual to say, what imperfect steps can you take today to reach there? And keep it as one thing that you can do. The first thing the person would say is, sir, I'm going to buy a shoe. Okay. First wear the shoe to work. That's all you need to do. Wear it. Be in the space of that goal. And most people have a very unrealistic way of fulfilling their goals. Their unrealistic way of fulfilling goals is, today I will write it into a charter. Tomorrow I will implement it. In 10 days, I will see a delta. In 1 month, I will lose 1 kilo. And then I will suddenly see change. It doesn't happen like that. It's a evolving process. And I can give you a relative example for it. Most people who are building startups today, one of the habits that they want to install is, how quickly can I scale? How quickly can I build this into a rock solid company? But here's the truth. Nothing valuable is built in less than 10 years. It takes 10 years to build a company. It takes 10 years to actually discover the joy of building something from scratch. Sometime back, we were actually discussing, right? It's like growing a plant. Yeah, and I have an example for that as well. If you see bamboo and if you actually plant bamboo, you don't see any growth for a number of years because the bamboo takes time to grow its roots. And once the roots are set, it just grows exponentially at a shoot level. So it is about your will, it is about how your foundations are, and then growth is automatic. Most people believe growth is a outcome driven exercise. Growth is an input. You need to have a growth mindset in order for you to believe that I deserve more, I deserve better, and I can become a better person. And when you don't start with that giving mentality, what you end up doing is show and tell. Chuma, I will lose weight, I look good for 1 month. Most people do this exercise before they get married. They want to look good in their marriage photo, no? So they'll do whatever it takes. Kalyanam mudinjiruchu, everything is over. They're like, wedding over, machan. How does it matter? But most people don't realize, some people who are able to maintain that weight after wedding, if you ask them, whether you're in arranged marriage or love marriage, they say, I want to fall in love with this person. I've just begun the journey. So I need to look good again and again and again and again and again. Those are the people who are able to sustain weight loss. And I'm coming back to weight loss because it's a common problem. Every time you want to learn something, and this is another, most people desire to either look good or to learn something fast. This is usually where they want to build habits. So if you want to learn something, most people have an issue finishing a book. Okay? The wrong way to finish a book is read 1 page every day. The best way to finish a book is, how many lines can you read? So you'll say 10 lines, very easy. 2 lines, can you read 2 lines? When you start reading 2 lines, you realize that you can read more than 2 lines. And that is where you're training your brain to unconsciously and subconsciously move your behavior through an emotion that I can do this. One of my coaches taught this very, very late in my life. There is a big difference between doing things daily and regularly. Most of us are regular. We don't do things daily. And daily is where the
Key is.
And doing it imperfectly is where the joy is. They'll put yoga mat, they'll put all of those things. They'll be like, today is the day. You put yoga mat itself is a big success. Somebody should be there to celebrate you.
No, see, I can connect this with when somebody wants to get into cycling, right? They'll spend all the time researching the best helmet, best seat cover, best pedal, best water bottle holder, best holder for the cycle, everything, right? All the effort goes on researching that, and then finally everything is ready. The cycle will be hanging in the garage. Right? They'll never, same happens with photography, right? They'll research, they'll ask tens of people that what is the best camera, what is the setting, all this. Then finally when they buy the camera, it'll be hanging somewhere. So, see, when you get into an organization, how do you motivate somebody to pick up habits that are, aligning to either his personal growth or the professional growth?
There is a principle. Okay, and I'm going to take about 1 minute in helping you understand how this is. There are 2 ways in life you can take decisions. This is personally. Either you apply strategy or you apply principles. When you apply principles, either you are fulfilling the principle 100% or you are not fulfilling the principle at all. It's either 0 or 100. The moment there is strategy, you start thinking, what will I get out of this? If this, then that. What are my consequences? How will I handle those consequences? You will walk away with assumptions. The moment you are strategic, you're dead. I will first work on principles. So for me, one of the principles when I get into an organization is, who are the smallest set of people with highest impact that I can begin? And another principle is, a human being can only begin from where they can. We will never begin from where we want. We will begin from where we can. Now, incremental improvement with sustained progress, with small beginning, is humongous possibility. How do I combine these 2 principles in an organization? Who are the smallest set of people leading change in that organization in some form or the other? So they are the people who are capable of change because they are driving it. Whether it is business results, transactional results, cultural results, doesn't matter. They are driving change. Get them. That means they are a fertile ground. If you want to grow something, you need to find a fertile land, right? And you have to start there. Now with those individuals, you apply this principle of you do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. Begin there and coach them. The next thing that I'm going to say is not a principle, but it's a cosmic law. All of us are born with unlimited human potential. And it pains me to see that we don't fulfill our potential or we don't utilize our potential in one lifetime. We have infinite potential within us. So a coach who is working with that organization must believe in the people. They may be bad performers. They may have bad mindsets. Nobody is good or bad. Every behavior has a positive intention. Even a murder has a positive intention. The behavior is bad. Committing the crime is bad. You have to correct that behavior. Now you work with that individuals by believing in their potential and show them quick wins, easy success, and then convert the easy success into difficult success and convert these early wins into late wins, and then trickle down effect. But let's say you're working in a startup and you have a 20-member team. The entire organization is 20 members. You work with those 20 members like a bar of chocolate, and you pour chocolate. Some will trickle, some will fall, some will work. So automatically you're able to observe from the 20 who are the people who are leading that change. And you don't celebrate the people who are displaying the change. You celebrate the people who are making hard effort to create that change and plug these people onto these people. So it becomes a coaching exercise throughout the organization. I'll tell you why it is very critical to behave like this. Because why are we working together? Because we want to help each other, right? In a company, if we can't help each other where we are spending 8 hours of the day, how will we as an organization add value to the stakeholders? It's a hypocritical statement, but we have to help each other. Now, what you will observe when you apply these two principles, which is beginning from where you can, believing in human potential, and actually trying to see, what can I do today for my tomorrow and how can I be valuable? You start questioning your model of the world. You start believing that there is goodness out there. There is abundance out there, that I deserve better. Every opportunity is a learning phase for me. And only then things will actually become better. 4 days ago, I was actually listening to what Ratan Tata was saying. He made a statement about layoffs and all of those things. But he said, crisis is your biggest test of ethics. And even at that time, you are being tested on your values. Who are you? What are you? Is more important than how you actually conduct your business. Business is just a byproduct of your personality, right? If you are not a helpful individual, then how can you lead an organization? So everything that I do with individuals or organizations is promoting that thought that everyone deserves to be better. They deserve more.
Right, Ratish. So, see, relatively we are all in same age group, right? But our organization are mostly employing kids who are just starting, who are just out of college, or just not even finishing college and quitting college and starting, right? So, this is a challenge not for me, not me alone, right? Like it's a challenge, universal challenge that so many startups are going through now, and especially in our field, like creative field, like design, photography, video, so many. So the kids who come in, how do you impart these principles, or how do you impart this culture onto their heads?
I have some irrational methods of imparting this culture of believing in more and believing in better. The first question that I would ask this individual who, and we are only talking about creative people and we limit to that example. The first question that I want to help this individual understand is, who is creative and how does that creativity come? First answer most people will give, sir, it just comes automatically. Very simple answer. No, I have inspiration and I want to be either in that environment or do certain things, and then my creative juices come out. The third response is the most unbelievable response. All of us are creative. I just need to make a choice. So shifting these two individuals to the choice world is the most simplest but hardest thing to do. And how do we do that is we get this individual to participate with everyone in the organization. So 0 to 30 days or 0 to 60 days, get that individual to talk to everyone, get the work done, and then you will start seeing what the individual enjoys versus what the individual says he or she enjoys. Then it's a question of creating that fountain from everything that this person enjoys. I'll give you a classic example. We're trying to put together an accelerator that can help a lot of startups working on climate change. Climate change is a very esoteric problem. Very few people understand why climate change is, how can I solve this problem, how can I keep planet Earth for our own children and grandchildren the way we found it when, or better than the way we found it when we were born. A lot of these startups suffer for funding. A lot of these startups have creative people working on vague problems, like energy grid, better wind energies, how can I, convert fossil fuel into renewable energy, very vague, deep, messy problems. I find a lot of creative people there. You have to do a lot of research. How can you motivate someone working in that field? The first step that you do is get that person to work with people where there is dignity. Dignity is a sign of respect. Now, if you are a photographer, in your field, you will have wildlife photographers, and of course, you will also have, for the sake of example, I'm telling you, you have wedding photographers. Both requires empathy, right? But at different intensities and different levels. So it needs mentors. So I need to sit with an individual, and the individual needs to tell me, this is how you can do it better, instead of saying this is the right thing to do or wrong thing to do. Like, if I had a son or a daughter and they were studying in LKG, UKG, and they ever came and asked me saying, my teacher gave me an assignment, what is the definition of right, wrong, correct, incorrect, good, bad? I don't think with all the education that I have, I can ever define this. There's something called as healthy, then there's something called as unhealthy. Healthy means it benefits you, it also benefits the other person. Unhealthy means it only benefits either one of you. So there's healthy behavior, unhealthy behavior. Creative people, young people always come with healthy behaviors. We just need to mentor them and give them that sense of dignity from 0 to 60 days by getting them to do everything. No organization gets people to do everything because they think it's a lot of cost, it's a lot of revenue loss, and most importantly, it's a waste of time. But I truly help this individual discover by giving them an opportunity. What is this organization? What are all the activities that we are doing? Do you really find meaning in being a team player and a contributor, rather than saying, I am a specialist, I will do only this, I will write content, I will take photographs, my dad taught me this, my grandfather taught me this, see, I have a degree. So what? Our education comes with an expiry date. Learning does not. So can this individual learn? Is there curiosity in this individual? If you keep that alive as a leader, it becomes extremely easy to do that in a startup. The irony is, startups don't do that. The irony is there are large organizations who still continue to do that, which is refreshing.
So in other way, throw multiple things at them, throw everything at them.
Don't take interview, get them to start doing work. The cat will be out of the bag. The best way is, I believe in you more than you believe in yourself. Can you translate that in first 30 days? You'll be like, sir, you're getting me to do so many things. I'm confused. I don't know what to do. Real question is, what did you enjoy doing? That's where the person will perform. And the truth will be out. Sir, I like content. Why did you like content? Maybe there are more women in the department. Maybe there is actually more challenge. Maybe there is like, oh wow, this content. I've never thought of writing it like this. So you start seeing the actual person. Character is scalable. Culture is scalable. The other C that is scalable is care.
So there is another problem relating to that, Ratish, and this is again super prevalent in creative field. So this new guy who comes in and we throw everything and then we train them, we help them find what they love and all that. 4 months, 5 months, he quits, goes either starts on his own, or goes and finds a job elsewhere in a bigger company or sorts. And this is a prominent question that I get wherever I go. Sir, somebody's coming, working for me for 3 months, then he's going out and saying he worked for this person and he does on his own. How do we handle this?
Good question. I have two different answers. You can choose. It's like the matrix, red pill or the blue pill. It will take you to the rabbit hole anyway. What is your definition of talent? Okay, I have two different definitions. One definition is talent is like human potential. Okay, then talent is manpower. Wikipedia will tell you, if you look at the etymology of the word talent, talent is the word that they used for gold. Gold means talent. We borrowed that word from Greek to actually say talent means manpower. The moment you look at it as manpower, it's like an engine. We are all products of industrial revolution. I need manpower, I need work done, output will come, I will reap the fruits and my company will grow. This is not sustainable in the 21st century. In 21st century, it is an experience economy. It is more about the intangibles. So if your customer does not want to buy your product or your service because of the experience that you provide or the experience that he or she gets from using your product or service, if that is more tangible, then as an organization, you should never be a business, you should be an institution. You should churn people out. So in my head, attrition is of two types, healthy and unhealthy. You should have a healthy churn of people in your organization and eventually you should become an institution. And if you don't have the mindset as a business owner that I'm running an institution, you will always feel insecure. That insecurity comes from this angle. Scarcity. When will I find good manpower? Yeah, I don't find great talent. A lot of IT companies come and tell me, employability, very bad. I don't know what engineers are learning. Then that is why they created this campus to corporate and all of those things. But if you believe in human potential, that people are multi-potentialites by nature, it is very important for you to embrace that change and see that I will send people of my organization to live their dreams. But my organization is the organization that they will come, discover their dreams. I will behave as a platform. I will keep running different trains. Whenever their train comes, I will tell them as a station master, this is your train, leave. And only when they exit, they're giving you an opportunity to create a young potential again. Amar, there is a pain associated with converting that gold into jewelry. Yeah. But why are you making jewelry with gold? You could have made it with aluminium also, no? The gold is what makes jewelry valuable. So it's the talent that makes your organization. Imagine a future 6 years from now, where every leading photographer, okay, and I just want you to imagine, close your eyes, okay, you've been invited to your daughter's birthday party in your daughter's school, and you're coming there, you're sitting in the front row. This is your daughter's 10th standard graduation. Your daughter is coming up on stage and she's actually saying, here is my father, he put me to a very good school, fantastic, but you know what, while I'm getting this 10th standard certificate, I realized that my dad is also a teacher. And she calls you on stage and she says, my dad is a teacher for a lot of people, can everybody get up? Whoever is his student. And the entire school auditorium gets up. Open your eyes. That's the power of an institution. You can either choose to be a better parent or a better teacher in an organization. Whatever I tell you or may sound slightly meta, but our life is meta, no? It is about who we are rather than what we do. You can be the teacher, you can be a lifelong student, you can change people's mindset into this industry. So either you can look at your organization making more money or creating great entrepreneurs, and money is just a byproduct.
So So your advice for leaders or the CEOs and people who are running the business is to become this coach and teachers.
Is to run their organization as an institution. Is more scalable. Because if you're an institution, your job is to churn out more people, right? You won't be worried about attrition. You will be like next batch, next batch, next batch, next batch. So you're creating valuable resources again and again.
So what is your advice for the employees?
My advice for employer, one is,
Employers, you said.
is to have a system.
Yeah.
The moment, because your systems are people dependent, is why you're augmenting leaders. For employees, join an organization is the biggest mistake that you can make in your life. Never join an organization. Join a boss. Join a mentor. Join a person, when you wake up in the morning and that person is calling and you're like, oh my God, he is going to give me advice and I know what I'm missing today. That's the person that you need to work with. Not like, oh, uira vaanguvaya, iniki veliki ponuma. Okay, if you take any 10 people and when I ask them, how's work? Yeah, work is going fine. Everything is great. Hey, how's your boss? Yeah, it's all okay. They have nothing to talk about their boss. They have nothing to talk about the person who basically controls their life. They've loaned 8-10 hours of their life on a daily basis to this individual. Are they growing? Are they learning something? Are they contributing to the world? Are they experiencing something? These are the 4 things that any person who has a great mentor or a boss will say. Dude, his time is just valuable. I know he will trash everything into the dustbin, but what I learned by doing that is just so resourceful.
And where in this coach, teacher and student relationship, where does habits come in, Ratish? How do you fit habits into this?
The word is relationship. Most people think habits are about results. Habit is a relationship that you actually form with an outcome. I have an outcome, I have a goal, I have something to achieve. How do I get there faster, better, cheaper, stronger is a habit. It's my relationship. I'll give you an example. Okay. I got married recently, 1 year old into the relationship. One of the first things that my grandfather taught me when I was young, because I saw a lot of broken relationships around me. And what my grandfather and grandmother shared was so blissful, because I was like, you guys fight a lot, but you can't live off each other. It didn't make sense as a youngster. It was like, if I don't like my Pakkathu Veettu friend, I will either break the toy or I will puncture the cycle, or I will be like, how can I run away from this individual? How are you not able to avoid each other? Then I convinced myself, they are living in the same house. Obviously, they can't live in 2 different houses. They have to come back and sleep, no? So that is why. When I became a teenager, I realized that, there are some activities they do together. They are dependent on each other. So I learned the word dependency, what dependency means. Then when I became an adult, from a boy to a man, I realized that they are investing into each other. They're not looking to harvest tomorrow. They're building it together. Okay? And it hit me one day, children is not the reason for their relationship. Children was the byproduct of their investment. And when I learned that, it took me a lot of time to decide to get married. And when I got married, I realized I'm not falling in love. I am investing love. And therefore, what I get back is companionship, respect, listening, and a lot of advice and fights. So these are all byproducts. But the fact is, there is someone who is always going to worry about me, even if I don't worry about myself. The same is the relationship that I share with her. I'm constantly thinking about her. There's mind space. But I might not be calling her and saying, oh, I miss you, I like you, what are you doing right now? That's romance. That's what we experience in college or when we are doing flings. But a relationship is something more concrete and strong. There are lots of WhatsApp forwards we get once in a while. That friend who you pick up and you can start from where you have. The post it looks really fantastic. But that's what is true relationship, right? So for us, habits is the best relationship that we can maintain with the outcome. If I look at it as something that I am building relationship with, I will improve, I will take feedback, I will be upset, but I will start again. So you said there is a guy who buying cycle, then people will put their clothes for laundry on the cycle, because that cycle is an object. If you pick up a racer, there is this wonderful movie called Rush. There are two competing racers. For the other guy, that is not a car. It is an object of desire that gets him to a speed that he can't imagine. So he treats it with so much respect, and he tells his mechanic, that's not the way you handle my car. So it's not a car. It's actually something else. That's relationship. Now, if you are picking up a habit to lose weight, and you're actually putting that shoe is enabling you to become better. That is the shoe that made you 6 packs, if that is even a destiny that someone wants to get to. Relationships are habits. Results are just byproduct. It will come, it will go.
See, when I'm picking an habit, obviously I'm picking something that I'm not good at already, right?
Yeah.
So from that state of mind, how do I fall in love with it?
Consistency. It's not time. Consistency. I will change, or I will teach myself to change the question, because questions are portals of discovery. I will change from how long did you take to make the 6-pack abs? How long did you take to finish the book? How long did you take to build that house? No. How many times did I work on it? On a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis, on a month basis. If you read any biographies are usually my biggest source of learning, whether it be books, whether it be documentaries, or whether it be movies. Okay, why biographies are so powerful? It helps me ask myself in that situation, what would I do then? Like, when you read Mahatma Gandhi's biography, or Mother Teresa's biography, or the recent, you had this pad man and all of that. What would I do if my wife called me up and said she had an issue with her sanitary pad? Like, what would I have done? Would I have ran away? Would I have said, or would I have said, okay, let's discuss? So biographies teach me that all of them have done something consistently. Any movement that you take is actually about doing something consistently. Any practical change, invention, there are so many people who says, Edison said there are 10,000 ways of not doing it. Even Edison did not count if it was 10,000 or not. But it is about consistently working towards making that happen. And consistency, most people think, is actually about doing it daily, and they are all right. It is not about regularly. It is about doing it daily. And if you can't do it in 2 minutes, you can never do it in 5 minutes. There are some people who come and ask me, can't spend time with my children, very COVID problems, business survival. So I ask them, how many times in a day are you a father? It's not how long. How many times in a day are you a father? So if they say once, twice, now that's a practical problem worth solving, right? Suddenly in my head, I can change things, and I'm like, oh, once, I can make it thrice. Very good. Then make it thrice. It's 2 minutes, does not matter. It truly does not matter. This afternoon, one of my team members, he has a child in UKG. His child has told him, now before and all, you used to come home only at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. You used to spend 4 hours with me. Now every day you're sitting here. You don't even have 1 minute to spend with me. So he told his daughter, Appa romba busy pa. Everything is shut down. So I'm working here. Every time I get a call, I will have to attend it and tell you that I have some problems. That is why I can't spend time. So she said, getting the call only is the problem. No. Switch off the phone for 1 hour. Look at the wisdom of that child. Yeah. Is that in his control? Unfortunately not. Because he won't know when he will get the call. But he has the ability to switch off his phone. So what the child is teaching the father is, show it once. I'm not asking for how long. Show it once. So now they've apparently come to an agreement. If I come close to you, whether you are on a call, whether you are eating food, you just have to say, "Hi, Papa." If you said that, I will move away from you and I won't disturb. Now there is peace in the family.
Very true. So it's not about how long you're doing it, it's about how frequent.
How many times are you doing it? So the question that I will ask is, consistency only leads to automatic. It's like driving a car. The more you sit in your car, you will develop the speed.
So there's always this problem about doing this consistently also, Ratish. So let's say I've been really bad at eating right.
Okay.
Then I suddenly get into this habit. I do it really well.
There's a surge period.
Yeah, I continue doing it for 30 days or 60 days, let's say, and suddenly somebody's coming and saying, "Hey, your skin is glowing," or "You have lost weight." Oh, you have done right. Then I get into this mode of celebration, and then, I am losing. I know how to lose. I'll go back to my old self, right?
Yes.
Does it? That happens a lot of times.
Yes.
So how do you avoid that?
Good question. You should first measure it. Anything that you can't measure, you can't manage. I'll give you an example. Let's say you went through that surge period, 20 days. Okay? There is a period where you got feedback, and then there is a period you didn't get feedback. The period that you did not get feedback, the time that you take to come back to surge will be longer. In after 20 days, if more people start complimenting you, there is an incentive for you to keep it alive, right? Okay? So are you discussing and sharing your results with the world? You know, in our own common terms, there are some people who say, "I want to write 100 words." I'll say, "Don't write 100 words. Write it on social media. Put it on a forum where somebody can care about it." And care is scalable. Okay? In habit law, it's called as making it attractive. You have to make your habit formation attractive. Only then can you stack the habit. You know what you called as surge is called stacking. It's called habit stacking. That means you had a great run. It's like Sachin Tendulkar. You had a great time, then you had a lull, and then you are able to come back. It's actually not on the valleys, but it's actually on the, what do we call it?
Plateau.
Ama.
So see, it's a great point. I totally agree with that, because many times I'm putting my workout photos and videos online, not to show off, but to become more accountable, right?
Absolutely.
And that helps me in so many ways. But let's say when I tell this to a person in my office, right? He comes back and says, "Sir, hey, you have like 50,000 people who are following you, so you can do all this." So, and you want to be in this mentor position, right? I don't want to be that. I don't want to be telling people or putting it out, right? What do you tell them?
You ask them to tell them to you. Make your organization a platform. I'll give you an example. Why are you telling this individual to change? Because you want this individual to become better. Where is that betterment going to be shown? Can the organization be the womb or the playground? As simple as that. Most sports people, whoever have seen how sports coaches work with sports team, it is the team that is the emotional safe space. If the team is not the emotional safe space, the weakest link of the team will become multiple. The strength of the chain is the weakest link. So if you see cricket teams, they smoke together, okay, they sleep together, they party together, they celebrate together, because they have stories in the locker room that you can't talk about. That's where the breakdown happens. That's where the anger happens. That's where the vulnerability shows. And that's why you need a team. And when you do workouts, like you mentioned, you need buddies. Everyone has buddies. What I mentioned as social media is a large scale platform. That's all. But there is always a unit that a person can discover to make it happen. Consistency will lead to automaticity only if you have buddy system. And the way to stack habits is you should take breaks. If you don't take breaks, what will tend to happen is, somebody told me very clearly, if you don't lose the things that's important to you, you will never know how important they actually were. So it is important to lose things. The time that you take to get back, that resilience that we call, is very important to learn in life.
So help me, help people. See, I've set up my mind, right? I've set up my mind to stay. At least I'll do 2 minutes of workout tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Right? That is my habit, and I'm picking it up. And I'm doing it for 5 days. And then there is the Sunday which is coming up, and then I'm like waking up in the morning in the bed. I'm like, oh, 2 minutes done. We'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah, which is good, which is a good mindset to have.
Right? And then that tomorrow happens. Oh, yesterday also I didn't do it. Okay, one more day. It's
One
okay.
more day. Yeah.
2 days is okay.
Yeah.
I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? And then that one day becomes 2 days, 2 days becomes 4 days,
Very nice.
and then I quit the habit.
Yeah.
Like smoking or any other habits,
yes.
right? So how do I get out of that?
I think what you've asked is a very reasonable question, and I have an answer to that. Let me just think of what example can drive home. Roshan and Rishan were two brothers. Roshan and Rishan lived in Chennai. Chennai's lanes have a fantastic evening ritual. It's called as one pitch cricket. Both Roshan and Rishan play in their neighborhood. One pitch catch out. In India, that practice or that ritual is called gully cricket. Roshan and Rishan are fantastic batsmen. 10 years later, Rishan got into the Indian cricket team. Roshan still plays gully cricket with his daughter. What changed? What do you think could have changed?
Same thing that I said, right? Like Rishan would have got up at 5th day and said, hey, it's okay, man. Roshan is doing it every day.
Rishan wanted to get into the Indian cricket team, so he got into the Indian cricket team. Roshan wanted entertainment. So the desire to play your game at a higher scale is what demands a coach. Roshan does not need a coach. Only Rishan needs a coach, because from gully cricket he has to reach Ranji Trophy. From Ranji Trophy he has to get into Indian cricket team, and that is only possible with a coach. Otherwise it's really not possible. Easier said than done. Okay, you gave yourself a break on Sunday, all right, but if you were Hrithik Roshan and you had to romance a heroine 20 years younger than you, and people have to feel that you are younger, your coach will beat the shit out of you. Most people, I'm talking about cinema industry, very relatable examples that our viewers can look at. If you have an author like Chetan Bhagat has an agent who calls him and says, hello sir, book and all over. Last year only you released. What are you going to do this year? I am your agent, you are giving me free money. What will I do? Hrithik Roshan or Shah Rukh Khan will say, sir, 8-pack abs aapne dikhaya sir. Pehle picture, now we have to reach 12-pack. That is the new trend. What are you going to do? Directors, when they work with cameramen, and I'm sure you will be able to relate to this example. Certain cameramen are like clay. Certain directors are able to take that cinematographer's ability and, shine through that work. And that's called molding. So you are a clay. You need hands that can work with your ingredients to mold you. And that's a coach. And the relationship to the coach are only people who will understand this, what I'm trying to tell you, are people who want to play their game at scale. If that's not a habit that adds immense impact in your life, or it's not a desire, you will never find a coach. You will try to sustain it on your own, which is a very ego-driven way of living our life. All of us need help. Asking help is courage. And without a coach, we will never actually become better. My very early coach used to tell me this. The first bogie of the train is the only bogie that runs because of the engine. Every other bogie is dependent on each other.
Right.
That's all.
Somebody is messaging you on Instagram saying, Rats, I want you to be my coach. What do you do?
Why? That's the first question I ask. And I let them pursue me until the desire is revealed. I'll tell you why that's important. We can't be someone for everyone in our life. It's like
So, in other words, how do you make somebody a coach?
good question. I'll give you the difference between a mentor and a coach first, because most people consider their mentors as coaches, and big confusion. Sariya? A mentor is a person who's a subject matter expert in what I am doing. It can be that task or activity. Let's say business. I'm running a photography business. I find the best person who's running photography business profitably or sustainably or differently or whatever it is, or a brand, and I get advice from that person and I do all the execution. And I have to come back to that person and say, this worked, this did not work. This relationship is what people don't get. This is a mentor. Yeah. So if somebody on Instagram wants me to become their mentor, that I can do. I can give advice. Yeah. A coach is a subject matter expert of you. You. Someone who understands you are lying da. Some drama you are doing. Chumma. Don't tell me you didn't get up in the morning. Last night you got drunk. No. Tell me the truth. That's a coach. Our mothers and fathers are great parents when they become great coaches. Incredible too oda line jeedu. Parenting is a heroic act if done right. It's a heroic act. Our parents are our best coaches. We don't take them seriously at an advice level. I don't know if they can change us, okay, and the changes from parent to parent, family to family, but you should treat your coach like a parent. Somebody that knows you and can nudge you. Most people don't know how to respect coaches. And I have a classic example, and it might actually sound very, very impolite in today's context. Every government school teacher, private school teacher, public school teacher today is trying very hard to teach class online. If I had a favorite teacher, I will help my teacher become successful online, because the teacher spending time with me today when the schools are shut is a big deal. That is the relationship that you maintain with a coach. There are so many students who are telling, very boring, I don't know what to do, this is what I do. But if you like the teacher, you will make the effort to learn. That's a coach. How do you find a coach? Which is the second part of your question. It sounds slightly vague, but I will try to add specificity in this. I find a human being who is better than me, and I submit. It's as simple as that. You should have surrender. You know, in today's generation, you like you tell me, you find a lot of young creative people. Sir, எனக்கு ஒரு portfolio இருக்கு பாருங்க sir. Okay, if you see the portfolio, you want to slap that person. Like இது ஒரு portfolio, and you're telling me இது ஒரு portfolio. Okay, some people will come and tell me, sir, I have made 16 short films. You please go and see on YouTube how many short films I've made. Okay, da, you made 16 short films. Why are you telling me this? Like, you want to ask that individual, right? I'll give you an example. K. Balachandar is a huge inspiration for me. For everything that I'm saying right now, it's huge. Like, you can't come close to that gentleman. You know how many actors he's produced in his lifetime? How many people's life he's put food on plate for so many people. But K. Balachandar says, it is not the number of people that I've given chance to. The number of people who utilize that opportunity and make me a better teacher, that's what I am proud of. You know, and in every interview that I see, most of his best students don't dare to sit in front of him. They stand in that corner and they're like, sir, you tell me, that's all. Surrender, that's surrender. You know, you need to be a good student for your teacher to shine. Your teacher shines through the student, and that happens when you surrender. And in 21st century parlance, it's called implicit obedience. Okay, first jump off the cliff. Your teacher will save you. You know, we do this trust exercise. I will jump and they will catch you. Okay, or if you fell down, they will know that you won't die. That is why they let you fall. That I see lacking in a lot of youngsters today. They evaluate the teacher. Hello sir, I took some advice from this person 2-3 times. Suddenly no change and all. You should meet a doctor, not a coach. You're looking for medicine. You're not looking to change your lifestyle. Therefore, you get a lot of junk. And through that junk, you start seeing a student. Okay, The best example also is Ekalavya gave his eyes, his hands, his mind, his heart. He gave everything to learn from Dronacharya from a distance. From a distance. Because Dronacharya says bye bye. In our world they will use something else, but he just said bye bye. But Dronacharya asked him for his hand. The story says asked him for his thumb or something like that. He just gave it. That's surrender. The learning is I am available for my teacher any point in time. And I can say this with confidence. In my father's age group, okay, and in my grandfather's age group, a lot of their bosses were their teachers.
True, very true.
They will never say, sir, solunga sir. If you wake up in the morning at 3 o'clock, solunga sir. It's not about the sir. It comes with so much devotion, bhakti, I'm not saying we have to put a poster of our coach and do puja every day, Can you prove that that person deserves you? Can you be a best student? Can you take that person's advice seriously? So when somebody messages me on Instagram, the first question I ask them is, why do you want to do this? Prove to me that you are a worthy student. So that it's a joy for me to work with you. And for creative agencies, my advice is always hire people twice as smart as you and half your age. That's when you get better students. Otherwise, it doesn't truly translate. So how did I find my coach? I saw some human beings better than me and I begged them. I literally begged them. Sir, give me 10 minutes, sir. Please, sir. There is this person called Sugata Mitra. You should listen to his TED Talk. Okay, in 1993, he went to Dharavi, created one hole in one building and put one computer there. And he left. When he came back after 1 year, kids in Dharavi have learned how to use the computer. 1993. With no education, nothing. He did a social experiment to prove that learning can happen anywhere, anytime without teachers. He proved that. I begged him for 3 years to spend 10 minutes with me. And when he spent 10 minutes with me, he only said, first thing he met me, he was like, he didn't care who was in front of him. He looked at me and he said, rats. He didn't call me rats. He said, Ratish, 2 things I will tell you. First, believe that you are the best learner. Then prove that you are the best learner. Automatically you will become a better teacher. I still follow that today. Any subject, somebody teaches me something, Excel, photography, something, I want to be the best learner. If I become the best learner, I am proving to whoever that person taught me that knowledge that thank you. That's my duty. Learning well is my duty. Or I should be the first person to say, sir, onnum puriyala sir, I really don't understand, help me. If we don't do both, we are invulnerable, we don't have the courage, there's a loss of character, we don't care about the other individual, then what empathy, changing the world, making a better planet, all chuma talk. So that is why I tell a lot of youth today, they don't know how to face their problems, they know how well to Facebook it. That's the problem. And that will happen if you have great mentors, great coaches who can show you to say, don't go to Facebook and all, call me, call me. I'm sure you're able to relate to this. When I call someone, when I am having a problem and that person listens to me and tells me, don't worry Kana, things will be all right. I have tears when I actually say this. It makes a huge difference for me as an individual. It's hope. It's somebody cares and it's important.
Amazing. When you're talking, when you're giving out all these points, I can relate to so many things. Yeah. So many things on a very personal level. In fact, if not for anything, right, like this video this interview is for me, right? I'll have to replay it like 10 times at least to go through all these points. It's amazing, Ratish. So we have already spent, I think, more than 45 minutes. For the sake of time, right? Like finally, I want to finish this interview with one last question. how do you encapsulate everything that you said and give it in like bullet points? How does somebody become a good employer? How does somebody become a good employee?
Okay. How someone becomes a good employer is develop mindsets that talent is abundant. Be the best employer for them. Behave like a platform. Behave like an institution. This is my advice for the employers. How to be a great employee? First, add value. Then ask what you deserve. Have that humility. That this is a mindset thing. The second thing is, wherever you are, be a giver, not a taker. The third thing, to grow in an organization, be the person that the leadership team will learn from. Are you the leader worth following? Therefore, you become better employees. In fact, there is a huge case study, and I'm requesting all of these viewers to learn. If you take, we look up to these companies called Apple, Google, and there was one more company, Microsoft, and I'm not going to take Amazon yet. There's a big leadership difference between the people who built the organization and who are now running the organization. Everyone who built the organization needed that personality. Whether you take Bill Gates, whether you actually take Steve Jobs, or whether you actually take Larry and Sergey. It was the way to cultivate an organization. Every other leader that you are seeing today, a Sundar Pichai or a Satya Nadella, or any other person that we are discussing right now, Tim, for instance, they're all great stabilizers. They are the people who weren't exceptional in doing anything, but they are the kind of people who you will call to mediate a conversation. And that's so valuable, that I can call you and you're dependable. I can call you and I know if you're stuck, you will tell me. I know I can call you and you will be loyal and you will tell me the truth. That's how to be a great employee. That I can call you, you will say no, and no is a perfectly acceptable answer, but you will say no, but. And that's value. And a lot of people who get promoted after a certain level, Harsha Bogle talks about this in his cricket coaching lectures. Talent versus attitude. Talent can get you to become the top 1%. What will get you to stay there is the attitude. That's human values, and that shows from your upbringing, your coaching, every interaction that you have with another human being. That's what proves it. It's about ethics. Ratan Tata spoke about it 4 days ago. He said, when you have an elephant organization, it's ethics. That's all it matters. Nothing else matters. And I ask a lot of people who make a lot of money by building large organizations, how big is big? How much money is enough? That is why the moral of the story is habits like money can do things for you, can do things through you. It's about who you are. And habit is only a tool. And using that tool with humility and grace is very important. And the best way to learn that is to find a coach. Find a coach. If you are in the age group of 20 to 30, please work with different bosses and then find a coach in that boss. And then from 30 to 40, work with that coach and build something for this company or for anything. And why should you build something? Because you want to be a valuable human being. And how do you determine value? What are you truly remembered for when you die? That's value.
Awesome, that's amazing. I know a conversation with you will be deep and very meaningful, but every time you just exceed the expectations.
No, thank you for listening.
This is amazing. And I'm sure we should do multiple episodes of this.
Happy to.
We'll have to do. There's a lot to talk and a lot to discuss, and thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for making this happen when people are fighting for hope. All of us are fighting for survival. The how are you question has changed in the post-COVID world.
Yeah.
It's about how are you truly. how are you? That you has become a emphasis in the post-COVID world, and that's so deep.
Very true.
So,
Oh, thanks again, Rats.
Thank you.
It's very nice. We had so many takeaways from this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
It is amazing. Super, Rats. Thank you.
I thought of something.
I'm so jealous of these your team members. They get to listen to you every day.
It becomes boring. Trust me.
Really? I won't be bored, man. So do you have like a ritual or something where you get like how do you keep building this knowledge or information? Like I always
I'll tell you the hack, okay?
Yeah.
Very, very simple hack. Find a person, improve their life. I usually improve their life by downloading all the knowledge I read in one book. One time teaching is 100 times studying. And then I'll have 100 doubts. Oh, you in the question Ketana, I don't have this answer. So I go back and change. And I usually work on subjects that add multiple benefits to multiple areas of my life. So for me, relationship is a very important issue right now. Not because I'm not spending time with my family, because I see that, oh my God, the space that she provides is just incredible. So I keep telling her, thanks to you, some 200 people are eating food in their houses. But I need to, maintain that at scale, right? So I'm learning about how to build relationships sustainably in marriage. How to build that relationship if I have this, so we've decided to have a child. So how am I going to be a better parent? I keep advising hundreds of people about how to be a better parent. So there's pressure on me to become a better parent. So I start learning about it. So then I realized, oh my God, why am I doing this ego-driven exercise? My organization is my children. Can I get them to get successful in 1 year's time? So currently I'm working on that. Every person becoming a mountain. That's all. And then abandon. Get new children. So it becomes easy.
Is there any daily ritual? It could be exercise, it could be meditation, it could be anything. It could be anything that has helped you become a better person, be more creative.
Non-doing.
What is not doing? Just not doing anything.
Yeah, it took me 6 years to get to 20 minutes. I started with 3 minutes.
So is there a particular time that you follow it every day?
Nothing like that.
How do you?
Non-doing means not having thoughts also, okay, Amar? How quickly I remove that thoughts also. Meditation is one method, but for me it's about non-doing.
What do you do exactly?
Nothing.
Like you sit, close your eyes. What do you do?
I go sit in my terrace.
But
then
you do it every day.
But
Without fail.
but it's very hard to remove thoughts,
Yeah, it's super hard.
It is hard.
It's chanceless.
So I've reached some 15-20 minutes, that's all. It's very hard.
It's so tough. See, for me, doing yoga post 7:30 itself is very tough.
See?
It should be before 7:30, or I cannot do. I cannot sit at one place and practice something without thinking about so many things.
But I've taken 6 years only because I've improved my consistency.
And how has that helped you mentally?
I become better aware as an individual in situations. The first benefit I received was I stopped reacting. Okay, and then I started questioning my responses because my brain is very intelligent, okay, and I tell myself that I'm stupid. So my brain tells, no, you didn't respond, but you reacted. All of this intellectual dilemma and all will happen. But slowly I realized, oh my God, I am thinking. I should stop thinking. Awareness is just letting that information come into me. But I've realized,
It's tough to believe for me.
no, but I realize meditation, yoga helps you to do your non-doing better. I have never been able to do meditation and yoga properly.
Ayyo, it is so tough for me.
It is still tough for me.
It's so tough. I have
only
ran
do
off.
non-doing.
I have ran out of yoga classes. I've ran out of yoga classes. Literally, I got so irritated in a yoga class, I ran. Like, they asked everybody to close their eyes, I just ran off.
I can't.
I just ran off. So, I'm that restless guy.
But that 15 minutes, Amar, for me, for non-doing, what it provides me is, I realize that No, because I am reading, I'm telling you, I'm able to comprehend information that space between two thoughts. It is about extending that time.
Of each thought.
In one thought to another thought.
That is another big issue lately, Ratish, because of the social media, because every information is a story now.
Yeah.
So you jump off from one story to another story, another story, another story. Your mind is like jumping off from information to information. Suddenly it's about environment, suddenly it's about photography, suddenly it's about politics, suddenly it's about... and for somebody like you, I see you, like from outside I can only see you as somebody who is going through this information overload.
There is fatigue. Sometimes there is anxiety, and what I mean by anxiety is not anxiety issue, it's about what am I going to do with this information. Yeah, like what am I going to do with this information. So I started getting coached in the last 3 years through someone, okay, who helped me understand that when you let go of things, okay, when you let go of things, you start realizing either how important they were to you or how unimportant they were to you. So 2 years, thanks to that person, I've learned how to live without a laptop. It was very difficult for me to let go of laptops until 2017. I see every mail, I have to respond to the email, I have to manage things, I manage my drive, I look at Excel sheets, I course correct, I said only if I have the laptop I have an issue, no? I abandoned the laptop. From 2017 till today, I have done my business only through phone. And in phone also, I am very clear, if I empower someone, I empower someone.
But there is always this war, Ratish. You have this thing and you can do something out of it, and you have to let it go, and somebody else is picking it up and doing it horribly.
Correct.
Then you are like,
Correct.
oh my God, what is this?
Correct. So one answer I have for that, and I am also trying to handle the truth of that answer, is there is always someone to handle that problem. Okay, that is the first question. So that is the first principle, and it's not a strategy. There is always someone to handle that problem. If I have come face to face with that problem, okay, it doesn't mean I have to solve the problem. What is the smallest thing that I can do right now for that? Only do the smallest thing. And the third guiding principle, which I keep telling my team again and again, whether you're running a family, whether you're running a business, whether it's friends, whether it is revenue, whether it is fitness, first survive, then sustain. Only then you earn the ability to support. Illana, we will support disproportionately, or we will support very badly. So I ask myself, is me doing that work versus my survival, is it worth it? No, it's not. Because you are in a better position to answer this question. I'll tell you why. Because you're doing something that you like. There are so many people working in IT company. So for them, doing that is better than this, because their survival does not give them happiness. So they do this for the lack of happiness in their life. Guilt trip. That's why you have thousands of volunteers coming for marathons. I don't know if you've seen. In the marathon, on the marathon, full IT company only. That one marathon, if they run, that's all. That gives them happiness. So for us, who's connected to what our purpose of life is, it is about focus, doing that problem and solving it slowly and steadily. That is very, 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 very important. So I am also struggling with this answer, but I'm getting slowly better at it because I'm conscious.
So I'll ask this question. What do you want to be remembered for?
Good question.
Or do you even care?
I care. I care about leaving a legacy. So I want to be remembered for being a very good teacher. That's all. But my life motto is very, very clear. It's to make a difference, to make a living. If I'm not making a difference in multiple levels in a project, then I will never pick that up. Because for me, I will never be successful at it.
I see a similarity. You and I are people
We can't
want
do one
to
project.
ஒரே கல்ல ஒரு ஃபார்மே அடிக்கணும்.
Yeah. Also, we need multiple things in the farm.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just a farm.
Yeah.
So I can't be alive without 5-6 projects.
Exactly.
I can't run a single project with one person. It has to be 4 or 5 people. Because we have been trained to be successful like that.
So you never have that fear of, oh, I'm doing multiple things at the same time, rather I could focus on one thing and get it done right.
No, I can't. I am unable to. So the
you have had the realization, and is that realization helping you?
Yes, and I'll tell you how it is helping me. I look at 7 things that I'm doing. Okay, I'll give you an example. March. Okay, it was a difficult time for you. It was a difficult time for me as well, because Narendra Modi decided our lives. So I had 8 businesses, Amar. Okay, I asked the same question: what do I enjoy? First question. Second question: what can survive in the post-COVID world? I focused all my energies in sustaining that. Rest I let go. So the answer is there is variety, and there is variety for survival. Okay, let's say I am doing 8 things. There will be some things that I'm not doing very well. It is obviously because I don't either enjoy it, or I'm not working towards its survival.
Yeah.
I just want it to work on its own. Anything that it works on its own, no, I will leave it unattended, because if I touch it, it will become a problem. I'll be like, it will work. It will slowly work. But one of the things I have realized very early in my life, teamwork makes your dreams work. I need to have a team. I will never touch a project because the concept is great. I will only touch a project where there is someone for whom that's mission in their life.
Very true. So another very philosophical question: what's your mindset when you go to sleep every day, and what's your mindset when you wake up in the morning every day?
Good. Every day when I go to sleep, I want to solve a problem.
Are you getting sleep? Because when you have that mindset of solving the problem, do you get sleep? Do you sleep immediately?
Yeah. If I can't think of a problem, I can't sleep. I can never sleep for the sake of sleeping. There are some days I shut down, okay, where I can't do anything for any of my businesses and I'm unproductive. It's because there is one problem. And 3 days I sleep till I literally sleep over it.
Oh, but generally it works the opposite. Like when there is a problem and you it's tough to go to sleep.
You know, what you're looking for at that time is a spark of a solution or some light at the end of the tunnel, some hint. So you're looking for inspiration. Okay. For me, the inspiration is shut down. And I've realized that I'm very imaginative in my dreams. And I'm like, I can play around stuff. And when I'm sleeping over and when I'm getting up, I tell people, I slept over the problem. Idu thappu, we should not do this. And my team will abuse me, saying, you were energetic, you gave some 20 points as to why you need to do. 3 days later, you're coming and telling me, don't do it.
What's your mindset when you wake up in the morning every day?
Eat.
What do you mean?
I want to cook. I want to do something I want to create something. Every day morning. That's my mindset with which I wake up. And over a period of time, that cooking has become writing. That cooking has become, you know, playing with someone and creating some joke.
Basically creating.
I have to be creating something first thing in the morning.
What makes you really, really happy? Like soulfully happy.
What makes me really, really happy? When someone truly changes. And I saw that this internship program, okay, Amar, SPI la, when we wanted to start, there was, we were getting some college students trying to, you know, see if we have something to do. It was like nobody attended to it. Then I focused on this first intern called as Nagraj. He did something and all, I was very happy. I said we will celebrate and call the team, and we went to ID and had lunch. This fellow, he said, don't waste all of that food. Okay, and konja appalamo illa chapati, all of that he took and he finished. Or round mudichittu he finished that. and then he licked his plate clean full. Okay, as in பளபளபளன plate வந்து வெச்ச மாதிரி இருந்தது அந்த plate. So I asked him, என்ன கண்ணா like what happened? Sir, நான் நாகப்பட்டினத்துலேருந்து வரேன். I don't know if you have noticed, sir. I have only 2 shirts. So I have to wait until that shirt is actually dry and only come to office. That is why I'm late. You never ask why I'm late also. You've never scolded me if I'm late. Every day for dinner I have urga. My friend will make rice, we have urga. And we'll eat only urga sadam. The last time I ate was 20 days ago, something like this. That day I decided, this program is for them. It is for Nagaraj. And Nagaraj needs to go and eat whenever he wants to eat. And Nagaraj should choose the food that he wants to eat. And it should make a difference to Nagaraj. That's why the very next day I sat on that internship program, I said, stop everything whatever you are doing. This is why you should actually do something. So when I see an individual, you know, not testimonial madri Amar, when they come and say that, sir, enakku vela kadichadu, sir, I have a family now. That day, sir, you said something. You know, you told me to follow this. I don't know why I did it, but I did it, sir. And this is the change that happened in my life. That time my cells are activated. I'm like, okay, this is why you exist. For me, that is legacy. And when somebody changes and they see the change around them just because they changed, is bliss. It's like, avladhaan. Now it's sustainable. அவனுக்கு வந்து கார்லாம் கொடுத்தாச்சு. Now he is the mechanic, he is the owner, he can do it on his own. He can come back. So it becomes a you know, a lot of these Margali Iyyars say, when they make sapad and all for this sabha and all of those things, they say, sir, I know யாரு திருப்தியா சாப்பிட்றாங்க, யாரு திருப்தியா சாப்பிட மாட்டேங்காங்க. And consistently I've asked them, how do you know this tripti? Like, what the F is this? Okay, so they say, sir, the person who's coming and telling you triptiyana sapadu, they have achieved 90% tripti, that's all. But that person, when they finish the sapadu and they move back, sir, and that they look at that LA like a drawing, sir, those are the people who attend tripti. So I walk around, okay, and these are caterers who have told me, saying, if I go in the first pandi, I look at the third pandi so I can see how many people are going back. They are going back in a tripti, sir. That's my count. So he say, I will create that tripti either with that payasam or I will create that tripti with all the sapad. But I am creating tripti. For me, that is important. So that tripti is very, very important for me. Like, I know when a meal like a human being is well done. Like, I know. And it comes with practice. I'm sure when you take a certain shot, when you look at it from your camera, you will know it did this shot. எனக்கு தெரியும் இது நடக்க போகுது. Even in the edit, I'm sure you'll be able to see. In the moment you wait and watch, no, they will break. This is the moment. So it's an architect mari. You start realizing that architecture has fulfilled. The building is stable. And that's how you build human beings also.
Discipline, talent, luck, and education. இது ரொம்ப important.
Discipline, talent, luck, education. Discipline. You can always be talented. You can gain any talent. Luck, even AI algorithm can't give it to you so far. Okay, somebody gave me a definition for luck. Something meets something. Now in Sanskrit it's called nimittam. Okay, luck is called nimittam. It's like the universe has conspired. Okay, education is a human being invention, doesn't exist. Nobody had any degrees. No, our great grandfather did not have a degree, but we were born. Discipline is what we cultivate, 100% in our control. with our biases, our model of the world.
And that is what takes us from one level to another level.
So in Canada, okay, one of the first books that I read for social change, I was trying to build TFI, MAD and all of that. Muhammad Yunus odia Grameen Bank, how he built Grameen Bank in Bangladesh from scratch in a country with so much phobia and all of that. Revolutionary macroeconomic thing. Yeah. So I knew he's coming to speak. And I saw him in the airport itself. Okay. I am here, there's some 5-6 lines and he's there. I have like one passport. Okay. He's there. I've noticed Muhammad Yunus. I'm still checking. Yunus side la theriyudu, mela theriyudu. You know, is it Muhammad Yunus or not? Yeah, it's Muhammad Yunus. Then he goes to the counter. From his bag, he's taking one deck of passports like this. Sandwich vecha eppadi irukum. Andha madri passport. And I'm like, okay, definitely Muhammad Yunus only. That's the proof. He's traveled all the countries, so he's actually here. So I try going next to him, can't. By the time I finish immigration and all of that, he is cab alla eri, he's in Canada somewhere. Okay. So I went to attend this conference and he's also there in the conference. And I saw him on day one. Okay, I knew. So day one I observed. There's always some 20 people around him. Okay, and he's walking, poor fellow, can't do anything. Okay, and then I noticed one behavior. Drinks a lot of water. Okay, next day I prepared one plan. Okay, I knew where he will drink his water. So because I've seen that behavior twice or thrice in that one day. Sir wanted to go to the bathroom. I knew for a fact that he'll come to that bathroom. I waited in the bathroom for 15 minutes. Urinal. Okay. So what I did, I didn't know he'll come to the urinal that I am in. Okay, that was definitely not in my control. Until that bathroom was in my control. He correctly came into the bathroom. Okay, and the poor guy wanted to take a piss. So while he was pissing, I switched my urinal from there to this side and I said, sir, this is the only place you are not surrounded by people, sir. I just need 10 minutes of your time, sir. Please give me 10 minutes, sir. I only want to ask you one question. If you give me the answer for one question, I will forever be grateful, sir. I have been waiting in that urinal for 15 minutes, watching you how many times you drink water, and I was sure you will come to take a piss here. He looked at me and he said, you are the first human being in my life who's had a conversation with me in the bathroom. I will definitely speak to you. And the gentleman took me to an experience. Okay, the experience is in the mari oru mela oru idu irukku and adulende chairs are there. Okay, so it's called moonshot. The experience is called a moonshot. So there are 4 chairs like this. In the mari 3 quarters irukku. So 16 chairs are there. So they will plug you in. Okay, and then they'll airlift you. They'll take you to a height from the ground and they call it moonshot. இதுக்கப்புறம் நான் குதிக்க முடியாதுல்ல, நீ பேசிதான் ஆகணும், என்ன பண்ணுவ? And there is a big mirror down, so you can basically see your ass, your leg, your face. The only thing that you can see is yourself. There's no view. He said, let's go to that exhibit, nobody will disturb us. So he took me, he held me like a bride. இந்த ரஜினிகாந்த் வந்து சௌந்தர்யாவை கல்யாணம் பண்ணுவாங்களே அந்த மாதிரி இழுத்துட்டு கடகடன்னு எடுத்துட்டு போயிட்டு, you block that, we only need 4. They said, no sir, it won't balance, there are 4. He said, no problem, put one rock or put something. Those guys put something on the chair and he airlifted me. Wow. And he said, now you have 30 minutes. You asked for 15 minutes, now you have 30 minutes, ask me the question. அப்போன்னு பார்த்து எனக்கு question ஞாபகம் வரல. Can you even imagine? So many things in your control. And I said, sir, I don't know what question to ask, sir. I actually prepared for it, give me 10 minutes. And then I forgot that I had a phone and I can check from my phone and all. You're not thinking, that awareness is not there. Okay, he touched my lap like this and he said, you forget about all of these things. What do you feel like asking me? Okay. And I asked him the question, sir, how do you handle fame? You created such a massive change for a country. He created change for a country. You know, yeah, compared to India, it's nothing. It's all, but it's a country. You know, how are you able to handle the fame? He said, always ask how many more people more. That in that format, how many more people? That will ground you. And he forgot my name. He was saying, what are you called? It's like an object madri. What are you called? So I said, my name is Ratish, sir. Okay, whatever is your name. Always ask the question, how many more people? Pending. Look at your pending. Pending will actually make you feel grounded. Okay. Then I said, okay, one more question, sir. I didn't know. I thought he'll give an elaborate answer. There'll be some 20 points I have to remember, all of that. ஒரே லைன்ல சொல்லி முடிச்சிட்டாரு. Then I asked him, say, can I ask you one more question? And I promised this. I said one question and you answered one question. I'm asking you for one more free. Okay. He said, okay, one more. You said only one question. You take one more question and no problem. He held my commitment. Okay. So the second question I asked him is, sir, when you were building this, when did you know that this will work? Okay. He said, I was 100% sure it won't work. He said this and I was shocked. You are 100% sure it won't work and you actually went and implemented this. He said, I was 100% sure it won't work, but so many people believed in me. I didn't want to take that for granted. So I believed in them. I said, okay, implement. I don't believe in the concept, but if it will work for you, great, you work. I will support you in the implementation. Go, make it work. Revolutionary feedback. And then the other 20 minutes, the gentleman asked me questions. Can you believe it? He asked me, where are you from? What are you doing? How is India like? You know, what are the problems that the underprivileged youth are facing? You please tell me what it is. That urge to learn from that individual, out of that 30 minutes, he spent 20 minutes asking me. Which was my biggest learning apart from both these questions. That wherever you are, whoever you are, learn from the individual sitting next to you. Very, very important. On that same night, okay, I went with my friend to an Indian restaurant to eat some dal and this thing. He was there again. Okay, look at the coincidence. He said, Ratish, I just finished speaking about you, about some individual who pursued me till the urinal, and then we spoke in the sky. I was just telling a couple of my students and full embarrassment. Said, yeah, urinal, then sitting somewhere. I said, okay, sir, I'm not disturbing you. Thank you so much. And then I moved back. But it's
nice. Awesome. Super.
I had fun. God bless you.
Thank you.